Hi there, my name's Sarah Williams. I am T3's brand educator and spokesperson. Today I'm going to be talking to you about T3's line of Heat ID products. There's two styling tools included in the Heat ID line. The first is the Lucia ID 1-inch Smart Straightening and Styling Iron with touch interface. And the second styling tool is the T3 Curl ID 1.25-inch Smart Curling Iron with touch interface. So how many of us have struggled to know what the perfect optimal heat setting is for our personal individual hair type? Based on a consumer panel survey of 81 women who shared their previous heat settings, 85% of those women were using the wrong heat setting on their previous flat iron compared to the Lucia ID. So what Heat ID does and what T3 is doing with Heat ID is it's taking the guesswork out of understanding what your perfect heat setting should be for your personal individual hair type. So on the Lucia ID and on the Curl ID, there's up to 9 possible heat settings. When you first get these tools home and you plug them in, you're going to be prompted to put in your Heat ID, which is your optimal personal heat setting. And the way that these tools run that algorithm is based on 3 keystone hair attributes of your individual hair type. So on the Lucia ID, it's going to be hair texture, hair length, and whether your hair has been color treated or not. And in the Curl ID, it's going to be hair texture, whether your hair has been color treated or not, and whether your hair has been chemically treated or not. Based on that information, these tools run an algorithm and assign you the perfect heat setting just for you and your personal hair type. So the first Heat ID input on both tools is hair texture. This one can be a little bit tricky to identify, so what we say is grab an individual strand of hair, just one, and run it through your index finger and your thumb. Now, if you can't really see that individual strand of hair and you can't really feel it, you have thin hair. Now, if you can see that individual strand and you can feel it, but it feels quite smooth, then you have medium textured hair. Now, if you can definitely see that individual strand and you can feel it, and you might even feel some bumps on there, you have coarse textured hair. The second Heat ID input on the Lucia ID is hair length. So what we say here is if your hair is chin length or shorter, you have short hair. If your hair is in between your chin and your shoulder, you have medium length hair. And of course, if your hair is longer than your shoulder, you have long hair. And then the third and final Heat ID input on the Lucia ID is color treatment. So if your hair shade has been changed up to 4 shades or more from your natural hair color, then you have color treated hair. This is the third and final input on the Lucia ID. And incidentally, it is the second input on the Curl ID, and the same rules apply there. The third and final Heat ID input on the Curl ID is going to be chemical treatment. So that's anything like a Brazilian blowout or a perm, something where a chemical is used to change the pattern of your hair. There you have it. It's super easy to identify your hair types for Heat ID technology on the Lucia ID and the Curl ID. Now that you know how to identify your hair type, let's walk through using the touch interface on these tools. I'm going to start with the Lucia ID. So the first thing you're going to want to do is press and hold the power button. This is going to turn on the tool. And there's some fun audio-visual cues once you turn the tool on. Now, to change your Heat ID settings, you're going to want to unlock the tool by clicking the power button twice. Now the tool's unlocked and I can toggle through and change each of my settings, hair texture, hair length, and color treatment. And then I'm going to go ahead and lock the tool. I'm going to do this again by pressing the power button twice. And now you can see my Heat ID setting up here. The tool is heating up while those lights are cascading, and once they stop, the tool is heated to temperature. Now, to turn off the tool, I'm going to double click the power button to unlock it, and then I'm going to press and hold the power button to turn it off. It's as simple as that. The Curl ID is going to function in the exact same way. So I'm going to press and hold the power button to turn the tool on. To change my Heat ID inputs, I'm going to double click the power button to unlock, and then I can go ahead and toggle through my different Heat ID icons. And then I would double click the power button to lock the tool so it would heat up and be ready for use. Nice and simple and straightforward. I hope this was helpful in explaining what T3 Heat ID technology is, how to identify your hair type, and how to use the touch interface on the T3 Lucia ID and T3 Curl ID. There's so many fantastic features that these styling tools possess that we just didn't have time to talk about today. So to learn more, visit QVC.com and search for either the T3 Lucia ID and or the T3 Curl ID. Thanks so much, guys. I'll see you next time.